And welcome to the March meeting of the Cuyahoga County Progressive Caucus. Tonight, we're featuring candidate for governor and former Dayton Mayor Nan Whaley. My name is Steve Haleko. I'm the political director of the Progressive Caucus. And before we begin, I just want to go over a few big upcoming events that the caucus has. And one thing I want to point out, we do not put links to events in the chat because we found that people start looking and copying and stuff and they can't follow the meeting. So what we're going to do is we're going to send you an email tomorrow, and the email will go out to folks who registered, but then, maybe at the last second couldn't make it. And then kind of like a detailed description of the upcoming events. Also in that email will be a link to join the Cuyahoga County Progressive Caucus. And if you join this weekend, you'll be eligible for our endorsement vote. We're going to do an endorsement vote for governor and for U.S. Senate next week. And also we'll put a donate link because we are all volunteer funded, all volunteer staffed, and we depend on small contributions from folks like you to keep our office going. Speaking of our office, it has been dormant pretty much during the pandemic, but it is going to be coming alive starting this Sunday. We are very proud to announce that the Nina Turner for U.S. Congress campaign is going to be using the CCPC office as a West Side campaign office. And our grand opening event is this Sunday from 2 to 4 p.m. If you are an East Sider, they're having a grand opening at an East Side office. It's on Noble Road in Cleveland Heights this Saturday at 10 a.m. And again, we'll send you details about those events in the email that we send out tomorrow. Monday, March 14th, Reverend Barber from the Poor People's Campaign is going to be in Cleveland for a big event at Trinity Cathedral. That'll be at Monday, March 14th at 5 p.m. We'll send you the details tomorrow. Later on this month, we will be having a Cuyahoga County Executive Candidates Forum with both candidates, Tariq Shabazz and Chris Ronayne. And we'll be getting that information out to you as we get closer, but that'll be in the email tomorrow as well. Deb Klein is our tech person. Deb, do you want to say something before we start?
Sure. Just a lot of you have been with us before, and if you've tried to chat, you'll know that the chat has been turned off. I don't know that we're going to have time at the end to be able to take questions, so the chat will remain off and everybody will remain on mute.
We actually have 19 questions that you, the audience, submitted, and I want to thank you because we got some very good questions tonight. Sometimes, we don't get questions that are that good. Mayor Whaley is going to give an opening statement, and then we'll quickly get to those questions. But before Mayor Whaley comes on, I'd like to introduce local county councilwoman and candidate for lieutenant governor with Mayor Whaley, Cheryl Stevens.
Hi, it's Cheryl Stevens. I tried to make it home from Akron, but I couldn't. So I pulled over I think I'm in Bedford Heights, so that I'm not driving on my way as part of this conversation. Let me say that Nan and I have known each other for more than 7 years. Can you hear me, Steve?
Yes.
And in that 7 years, we grew closer and closer as we discussed the concerns first of Dayton and Cleveland Heights, but then of Montgomery County and Cuyahoga County, and in the last couple of years, what is important across the state of Ohio. For those of you who know me, you know that I am a worker bee. I care a lot in Cuyahoga County about how we house and provide affordable housing to people. I believe home ownership is the way to a secure future for many families. It's definitely the way to build wealth. I care about places like the food bank and how we make sure during this pandemic time, when many families didn't have the income that they historically had, that every family had enough to feed themselves and their children. And as I thought about all these things and about employment opportunities as we come out of the pandemic, and I began to have conversations with my friend Nan Whaley, we focused on the fact that all Ohioans need to have opportunities for a decent education, a decent publicly sponsored education, the opportunity to have a good job, and the opportunity to have affordable housing, whether it was to rent it or own it. And so her phrase, which you will hear us talk about more and more as we campaign toward the primary, is that every Ohioan deserves one good job for their income to go up, their expenses to go down, and for their government to care about them. And we know that the progressives of Cuyahoga County care about that, and most Ohioans care about that. So tonight, I want to introduce a friend of mine. Y'all have known me from my work in Cleveland Heights and District 10 of Cuyahoga County Council, but my friend Nan Whaley is from a little bit further away than District 10. She's from Dayton and Montgomery County, but she cares about the quality of life of all Ohioans. We hope that she can answer your questions and that you can learn more about the reason we believe that we're the team of people to represent you. Nan, are you there?
Cheryl, unfortunately, she's not on.
Oh, boy.
Well, Cheryl, since we have a lot of questions, would
Give
you
me
be
the first
okay?
question and I'll answer it.
All right, Deb's got the first question.
So here we go. How would you make Ohio's environment better, and what is your position on fracking?
Well, we already have a lot of agreements on fracking, and so what we'd have to look at the legal ability to reduce it, because a lot of our environmental perspectives are that wholesale fracking is not good for the state of Ohio. There may be some situations where it does work for us, but in reality, we do not want to make sure that we create unstable lower levels of the ground underneath our homes or our communities unstable. Environmentally, I'm pretty conservative. I think that nobody wants to wake up one day and have contaminated air or contaminated water. So we have got to, and this has been a major personal point for me, lead in urban centers, since most of my career has been built in urban centers, needs to be eliminated. We need to make sure we take it out of our pipes, out of our walls. Those of you who've known me for a while know that I am very concerned about community development and housing, the construction of new housing and the rehab of existing housing. So sometimes when people do remove the paint from houses, they dump it on the soil next to the site. We've got to make sure we don't leave any place contaminated. We need to make sure that our environmental laws consider the care of our families and individuals primarily, and then we work to make sure that America is cleaner. Climate change is incredibly important to us. We need to make sure that we make our world a greener place, not a dirtier place. So there's a substantive amount of detail that goes into being conscious about the environment, focused on sustainability, and both Nan and I are concerned about those issues. And just this month, at the end of February, we were endorsed by OEC. So that tells you that we've done our homework on environmental issues and we'll make promises about what we can do. And the best part of being public servants for a long time is we know that our evaluation will be done on what we get done. So we'll tell you some things that we specifically believe can be done in the first 6 months to year that we serve you. And then we'll work hard to do those things, not just talk about them.
Thank you, Cheryl. I do not see Nan yet, so let's move on with the next question.
Okay, here we go.
How will your message reach rural voters in Ohio who tend to vote Republican?
So imagine this. I was just in Hardin County which is on the west side of Ohio, tends to be rural. I saw lots of farm equipment, some soybean fields, some cornfields on my way there. It's about 2 hours and 45 minutes from Cleveland Heights. It's incredibly important to understand what rural voters want. And in many ways, they want some of the similar things that urban voters want. They want their children to be well educated at publicly supported schools, meaning they'd like for their child to go to Martin Luther King Jr. Elementary School. I just created a name as we're sitting here talking, and that it is paid for by their taxes, and that their children are learning all the basic skills. And if their kids happen to have even better skill sets, that they're nurtured and encouraged to advance, so that public education is one of the best educations that a child can have in their area. We also believe that most rural Ohioans have their own version of the American dream. The kid can get well educated, that they can have a decent job in addition to what, or in place of whatever they do, if they own their own farm or farming country or farming land, and that they understand that we believe they should have access to clean water, that we should care about how they care for their land, that they should be able to invest in their land, that they should be able to borrow reasonably to reinvest and grow their farming facilities. So it is important and that we understand their issues, and that Nan and I talk with them. So that's why I was in Hardin County for two and a half hours on Saturday to listen and learn and talk to people about what we believe the basic rights of every Ohioan should be, whether they live in a rural community or in an urban community. So we're not ignoring anyone, and we of course completely believe that every vote that would be for basic things that Americans and Ohioans believe that they should have are what most people are going to want.
Deb, is Mayor Whaley here?
Hi.
Yes,
Hi,
she's
everybody. Sorry
Hi,
about
Nan. Hope you don't mind. We had a lot of questions, so Cheryl started without you.
Oh, that's great. Cheryl's super helpful, and we're great partnerships. So I know she can answer them just as well as I did, Steve. How are you?
Good. How are you? And I know Cheryl from up here. So do you want to give a few minutes opening remarks before we move on with the rest of the questions?
Yeah, I'd love that if that's okay with you guys. So just 1 second. I'm trying to find you on this piece. Okay. 1 second here. I hope everybody's doing well today, and sorry for my tardiness. I was looking at my calendar a little wrong, so I apologize for being a little late this evening. Look, I think the big issue that we're running in this race, you guys think I've spoke to you guys, I think a little over 4.5, 5 years ago, when I was running for governor the last time when we were in person. It's great to see some of you in this way again, and hope that we get to see each other in person here very soon. You know, and since I saw you last, you know, a lot has changed for me, considering what Dayton's gone through in 2019 and the issues that face Dayton in 2019. You know, as a mayor, you don't have the luxury of looking away and saying it's not your problem. And definitely that summer put a fine point on that for me. In the course of 10 weeks, we experienced a KKK rally that came to our city to incite hatred and fear. Less than 2 days later, we had tornadoes, 15 of them, that ripped through our community. That had never happened before in the history of Dayton. And then 10 weeks later, we experienced a senseless mass shooting that killed 9 people and injured 27 more in the course of 32 seconds. The day after the shooting, we had a vigil on the same place where we had lost our loved ones just hours earlier. Thousands of Daytonians came to the vigil, and when Mike DeWine took to the stage to speak, they shouted in frustration, "Do something, do something." I'm running for governor because I intend to do something. You know, it's safe to say that when I became mayor, Dayton was at a low point. The Great Recession had wreaked havoc on our community. We had lost thousands of jobs. The houses laid vacant, and there was a sense of almost hopelessness for our mid-sized community. We led the nation in accidental overdose deaths when I came into office. But, you know, as an Ohioan, you take action and you do something. So the first thing I did was to connect everyone from the criminal justice system to hospitals to nonprofits to find a way forward on the opioid epidemic and treat the disease like the addiction it is. We were the first city in the state, the fourth in the country, to sue the pharmaceuticals, to hold them accountable. We've won that, and the money is there to help our communities now. And we cut accidental overdose deaths in half. It's hundreds of lives saved every single year. And last year, when the COVID pandemic raged and the opioid epidemic actually had 100,000 deaths across the country, the most ever in the history of America so far, Dayton remained flat and actually went down a bit because of the work we've done around the epidemic. When our kids were entering kindergarten unprepared, again, we brought the teachers, nonprofits, businesses together to find a way forward. And on the same day that Donald Trump won my county, Daytonians passed high quality universal preschool for every 4-year-old. It's been so successful that we've increased it to every 3-year-olds this past summer too, making a real difference and investment in young people's lives. When you invest in young people that don't have a voice, you see other investment that moves forward. We've had thousands of new jobs, over $1 billion of investment. And we've done that by focusing on solutions, by bringing people together that we don't always agree with. Now, while we've done that in Dayton, and other communities have been working hard, and their local leaders have been working hard to turn their communities around, we've seen no help from the State House. The political interests of the State House are more about lining their political pockets rather than doing what's best for communities like Cleveland Heights or Dayton, and we deserve better. So here's what we want to do as your candidates for governor and lieutenant governor. We want your pay to go up, your bills to go down, and the government to actually work for you. So what does that mean? It means to making sure one good job is enough, no matter what community you live in Ohio. We want to raise the wage across for everyone, but particularly, raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, which think about is still not is the minimum to really provide for a family. We also want to invest in the new technologies to create new jobs, like renewable energy jobs. The wind turbines and solar panels should be built here in Ohio and Michigan and Pennsylvania, because they're investing that, and that future is eating our lunch. And we also want to make sure that the wealthy and fair share pay their fair share of taxes. We think that's an important part too, to get bills to go down. The other parts for getting bills to go down, if the state for the past 20 years has been cutting taxes on the wealthy and corporations, it has increased your property taxes every single month. So because local communities have to do that to cover basic services, making the wealthy and fair and corporations pay their fair share will actually help us in keeping bills down, particularly for local community levies. We want to work to make sure that utility costs go down, which means fully repealing House Bill 6, which is the largest corruption scandal in Ohio history. We're still paying on that every single month because it's not fully repealed. And we want to provide universal preschool for every 3- and 4-year-old in the state, because childcare is costing an arm and a leg for families. We're looking to see ways that we could also make sure that we can invest in 0- to 3-year-olds. We know that 2 million American women have opted out of the workforce, and a lot of that has to do with just not being able to pencil out childcare. If we're serious about being for families in Ohio, we need to invest in women and children, and investing in childcare, I think, is the biggest opportunity both to get families' costs down, but also to help with our workforce shortage. So to do all that, I think getting people's pay to go up and their bills to go down makes a lot of sense. We have a lot of common sense approaches on how to do that. But in order to do that, we have to make sure that we have a government that actually works for us. And I know everybody on this call knows that the FBI has called the Ohio State House the most corrupt state house in the country, which takes some work, I'd like to point out. Mike DeWine got First Energy to pay for his campaign, and in return, they got everything they wanted. They got $1 billion bailout paid for, like I mentioned, every single month on our utility bills. They got their top lobbyist to be the utility regulator for the state. And the First Energy has even admitted that this guy was being bribed. He was bribed by $4 million. And the same day that his house was raided by the FBI, Mike DeWine came out to the press and said he's a great guy. Mike DeWine is only concerned about the status quo. We see it over and over again. This is a man that's been in office since I was 10 months old, And his focus is around what's in it for me and and the people I care about, not regular Ohioans. We've seen it on common sense gun legislation. We've seen it on COVID. We see it on the gerrymandering issue. We see it on First Energy. Enough is enough. Now, look, I believe Ohio deserves better, and I believe Ohio can have better. And for us to do this, we have to believe that we deserve a better outcome than what we have now. So that's why I'm here asking for your all support. I'm so excited to have Cheryl on this ticket. We are obviously a historic ticket for Ohio, and we're proud of that, but we cannot do the same thing over and over again as Democrats and run the same kind of candidates over and over again and expect a different results. That, my friends, is called insanity. And so we are trying to move forward a bold new ideas with a bold new ticket to show Ohio has a new way forward. So Steve, I hope that helps on what we're doing. And we're excited today. Today we just received Planned Parenthood's endorsement. We're the only candidate that's been pro-choice our entire career for both of us. And so every pro-choice group that exists has endorsed us, and we're proud to have that support, as well as the endorsement of Senator Sherrod Brown, 180 other elected officials across the state, and I think 4 statewide unions now. So we're proud of our coalition of support, and the Ohio Environmental Council, actually, that has been the leader in trying to repeal House Bill 6. So with that, I'll take any questions you all have.
Yeah, we have, the first question we have for you is, will you increase the funding and protect Medicaid in Ohio?
Yeah, so I just was on the phone with a doctor today that had a 27% cut on Medicaid reimbursements, and it's affected, like, he's a psychiatrist and they did telehealth, and it's affecting his ability just to stay solvent. So clearly we have a real problem here. And also the payouts for Medicaid is so small that it's really affecting access for our poor communities. So yes, and yes, this is a super important issue for us. We need to make sure that everyone has low cost healthcare and that they have strong access to it.
Nan, just want to point out, these questions were submitted ahead of time by the folks here. We found that's quicker than trying to find them, in the chat. And also, Jermaine said you had to leave at about 7:20. Is that correct?
I can stay. Since I was late, I can stay till 7:30. I'm sorry, you guys. Sorry about that.
Okay. So we actually have 16 more that were submitted. And this is a good audience, and we have good policy questions for you. So if you want to try to figure how to get through all the questions with shorter answers, that would be good. The next one is, do you support universal health care for all Ohioans?
Look, I know we call it all different kinds of things here, but here's where I stand on healthcare. We have to get the costs down so people can afford it, including, supporting an expansion of Medicaid, and make sure that we get our fair share from the federal government. And then also we have to deal with access, right? I see it in urban communities and rural communities that they're not getting the same kind of healthcare that you get in richer communities. The state has a lot of say about that, particularly on regulations around hospitals, to make sure that they're just not letting hospitals do whatever they want. I've had that experience personally in Dayton and watching it, and the state has a huge amount of ability to do that. So those are the places I'm really passionate about, getting costs down. Particularly another place is with the PBMs, another place on prescription benefit management, where they have let the pharmaceuticals completely roll over them. Sorry, that's my dog. Roll over them on this issue. And because, again, it's just special interests at the State House that get what they want.
So our next question, you mentioned that you received the endorsement of Planned Parenthood today. So this kind of goes along those lines. What will you do to protect and restore reproductive health, specifically access to abortion services in Ohio? Oh.
Sorry, I muted myself so you couldn't hear my dog. I got him under control.
You can let the dog bark. We like dogs.
Yeah, so I'm the only candidate in this race, Democrat or Republican, that has been committed to being pro-choice my entire career. I was endorsed very early by Pro-Choice Ohio because of the work I did as mayor. And again, this wasn't something that, was part of the mayor's position. It was something that I fought to do because it is so very important. Okay, and look, when Roe falls, And unfortunately, I think it is going to. So we have to plan and prepare for that. We need a governor that is going to be very strong on pro-choice issues. And so my commitment to Ohioans and to Planned Parenthood and to Pro-Choice Ohio is number one. I will veto any bill that restricts access in any way for women's reproductive and abortion access. And number two, we will have a pro-choice Department of Health director. So those groups have a real partner in trying to allow access in our state.
Next question, Nan. What do you think about the way Governor DeWine is handling the COVID crisis, and would you have done anything differently?
So Governor DeWine was doing great when Amy Acton was the head of Department of Health for those 2 months. And we saw this change, particularly in May, the movement when if you all remember, he first said that he was going to have a mask mandate, and the next day he folded. And actually the city of Dayton was the first city in the state to put on a mask mandate during that period. And look, we've gone to many reiterations of what we've learned about the virus, but think about that. That period was a time where we had no tests, we had no vaccine, and he folded the next day because of extremists in his party. And we've seen this over and over again since that time, right? I think my issue with DeWine on COVID is the same I have with him on a number of issues, is that he says what's right when it's politically convenient. And then when nobody's looking, he completely kowtows to his Republican base because he's more worried about his primary than saving lives. You need to look no further than this past month, where Ohio actually led the country in deaths to COVID. It's just not a priority for him because he doesn't want to talk about or do the work because he's too afraid that he'll lose the primary. And look, he's only polling in any poll. He never can get above 40% in these Republican primaries. That's where his priority is. And his priority is not in keeping Ohioans safe and getting our economy moving. And there's a way to hold those both at the same time, but he's just more interested in not offending his political base. And look, I've said this in my opening, it's, we see this in gerrymandering. He says the right thing and then he doesn't do the right thing. I think Frank LaRose has learned this trick from him. He did it around common sense gun safety issues. We just see him do this over and over again. And I think that's what's really frustrating him. We deserve better than that.
So our next question is, if elected, do you favor any restructuring of the PUCO and how its members are selected?
Yeah, so I actually released this. I was the first, I was the first candidate in the race to put together an anti-corruption plan. And you can see that at nanwhaley.com/ethics. It's a couple of pages long. It's actions that can really be done. And then also, as being endorsed by the Ohio Environmental Council, which has been the leading fighter against about the PUCO and the repeal of HB 6, we want to increase obviously it goes without saying, we need to fire all the PUCO officers. That's obvious. We need to increase the nominating committee because we have to be realistic. It's an extreme legislature. So we're more likely to get a bigger number of folks that are nominating rather than really getting a change of less members. And that would give us an opportunity to put folks on that aren't just, right now they have just all the utility companies and nobody that's about consumer counsel or consumer fairness. So that's really key too. And then my other point about this is look, First Energy is the most egregious example that we've seen, and House Bill 6 is the most egregious example we've seen of corruption. But my anti-corruption plan goes to the heart of corruption to root it out. 2 years, when in 2018, we were talking about the electronic classrooms of tomorrow, where they had a large major donor that built a school that had no students and sucked tons of money out of public schools. 2 years before that, if you remember, it was the payday lending scandal, where they had large donors that wanted to suck poor communities dry. So over and over again, this is a whole system of political interest that we have to get to the heart of. And House Bill 6 is just the latest egregious example. I think what's key about us on our ethics plan. But certainly we need to redo the nominating process. We've shared that publicly, and also they obviously need to go.
Next question. As you probably know, all of the different agencies handling workers' issues are located in different state agencies. Would you commit to establishing an Ohio Department of Labor?
You know, that's a really great idea, Steve. I haven't thought about that yet. I will look into that. You know, we're very serious about our policy discussions. And so you are correct that it is very, very siloed, and we need to have our efforts to be workers first. For sure, that's been a priority in my campaign, and it's who I am. You know, I'm the first to graduate college in my family. My dad is a retired auto worker. You know, I know that labor and the work that he's provided is how I'm sitting here today. But let me just say, I'll take that back to our policy team and consider it, because it's a great idea.
Thank you, because that's my issue. So, I'm glad to hear that you're in favor of it. What will be your priorities in the first executive budget you submit to the Ohio legislature? And by the way, I'd be willing to help you on that Department of Labor.
That's great. Please, Jermaine's on this call. If you can send your info to Jermaine. The way that we do policy on our team, just to let you know, is we have 2 volunteers, Perry Sabity and Wendy Patton, who volunteer on their off time to co-chair policy tables. And on different issues, policy experts come and help us, you know, say what's doable and what's real. We don't want to promise something we can't deliver. And so if you go to my website, you will see some really detailed policy plans, but they've all been done by experts in our communities. For example, Cheryl Stevens is like very passionate. Obviously, our Lieutenant Governor is very passionate about affordable housing. There's a housing table that's working right now, also a criminal justice table. So you will see us announce some policy decisions on this, but this is a really great idea that we could flesh out. But I always, because I'm asking these people to put a lot of time in this work, I don't ever make a commitment until we have it all figured out. So I'll definitely have, if you can put your info to Jermaine, we'll definitely make that connection for this great idea. So thank you. Did you ask me a question? I'm sorry.
Yes, I did. What will be your priorities in the first executive budget you submit to the Ohio legislature?
Look, I mean, I don't think we can get any of this done if we don't clean up the corruption, right? We have a broken system. And so most of the work that we need to do very first is to get this cleaned up. Particularly in our budget, we've committed to, you know, actually having a public accountability commission so the politicians aren't policing themselves. Also increasing the Inspector General and the Ohio Ethics Commission's funding. They haven't had any funding increases in like a decade, even though they've had an increase of about 30% of requests around corruption issues. So we want to do that. We also want to make sure that we the only good thing that the state house have done this year is actually the Patterson Cup bill that was, I think this time called it was John Patterson, and then he passed on to Bride Sweeney, the Sweeney Cup bill, that does a good job of funding, but it's only 2 years. So really protecting to make sure that we're taking the reliance off of property taxes like DeRolf has called for is really, really important. They should have funded that through for 6 years and they didn't. So fighting for that will be really key because again, we've got to get the reliance off of property taxes for our folks. I'll do a lot. The other thing that will be key is, again, like I mentioned, actually making sure that wealthy and corporations pay their fair share as part of this budget and investing in childcare. I think that's a key part to make sure that our families have the opportunities that they need. The last thing I'll say is we need to invest in addiction services. You know, Dayton did that locally, the examples I gave, and smaller communities like Dayton can't afford to provide addiction services besides what Medicaid offers. And that's only 30-day treatment sites. And, you know, you cannot get off of heroin in 30 days. You have to have step downs, and every person that's addicted has a different journey. And we do not have enough tools to really do that in local communities. And I've seen that, you know, we visited 72 counties now. I see this very specifically in smaller communities. And look, this is something I know because Dayton was the tip of the spear and other communities are experiencing it. The state needs to step up and be the partner they should be when it comes to addiction and mental health issues. So that's my list. I recognize that in order to do that, we got to get the wealthy and the corporations to pay their fair share. And like, look, this is a policy decision I completely disagree with the Republicans on. For 20 years, John Husted, when he was Speaker of the House, had this idea that if they cut taxes on the wealthy, that somehow Ohio would be better off. And like, if that was the case, I would not be running. It's a failed policy idea that is not working for our state. We need to make sure we're investing in our people and our communities. In order to do that, they got to pay their fair share.
Thank you, Nan. The next question deals with part of the Progressive Caucus's mission in Cuyahoga County is to exercise our First Amendment right to peaceful protest when we see injustice. And the next question is, if the Ohio legislature passes any of the horrible anti-protest bills, what could you do to overturn them?
Well, I mean, I would veto them, Steve. I think people have a First Amendment right to protest. What they're doing is, you know, trying to subvert democracy because, which is so what? I mean, these guys, you know, they claim that they want to have democracy, but then they do this. They claim that they care about safety, and then they, you know, move the CCW bill. They claim they care about home rule, and then I think it's over 19 bills since 2010 that they've taken on home rule. So yeah, so I would veto those efforts.
Thank you. Next question. Do you support ranked choice or instant runoff voting in Ohio for statewide and legislative races?
Yeah, look, I'm very interested in ranked choice and instant runoff. It's not like something that is like the lead thing I want to get done. But I do think that there needs to be more discussion about this and more opportunity around this. You know, cities that have done this like Minneapolis and New York, I think they get a pretty great result where people don't game the system as much. So yeah, so I am open to it. It's not something I'm gonna, you know, I'm more interested in the economic populist issues to get done in Ohio as governor, but yeah, I'm very interested in it.
And I see Steve is not there, so I'm going to go on to my next question that I have for you.
Steve is done with me. He's like, I'm done.
He's done. Yeah. How do you feel about legalizing marijuana in Ohio?
Yeah, I was the first city in the state to decriminalize marijuana as mayor. And I said at that time that I was in favor of legalization of the state of marijuana in the state if I could, but we weren't able to. So I've been in favor of legalization. I think, you know, it was the first public effort, gosh, I forget what year, but while I was mayor. So I'm in favor of that. I think it's important, you know, to get the taxes from legalization. But secondly, you know, we know how the law against the criminalization of it has affected Black people to 9-10 times the amount compared to white folks. And so I'm also in favor of expunging records of folks that have had marijuana convictions. But let me be clear, I don't think this is a silver bullet. You know, we can't pretend that marijuana is like the lottery for education, right? It's a good opportunity to do the right thing, but it's not going to solve our problems in the state. And again, we have to make sure the wealthy and the corporations are paying their fair share. That's the only way we can really see this through.
So Steve, I jumped and did my next question. So you have.
I said, Steve, you were done with me. You had walked out like you were over.
No, man, that was my dog I had to deal with.
I was just.
All right. What is at least one progressive policy that you would like to see implemented?
At least one.
You can go more if you'd like.
Well, look, I mean, I think progressives, you know, a lot of the issues that I'm for, you know, from, you know, making sure people and wealthy and corporations pay their fair share, which is frankly my favorite progressive issue that I think is really, really key, protecting and advocating for pro-choice and women's reproductive health care rights, making sure that, you know, there's real equity and equality for our LGBTQ citizens, right? You still, in Ohio, you know, you can be discriminated over, you know, where you live if you identify as LGBT, you know. There are a number of issues. I think it's harder for me to say like which ones don't I agree with. I've been proud of my record as mayor. I've been considered the most progressive mayor in the state of Ohio as a place that folks go to try new legislation, and I'm proud of that work. But I think the key for me is the priority is around making sure that we have good opportunities and really raise this wage, which is another progressive idea I'm in favor of. Those are the things I'm really, really driving out. Like, I don't think you can look at my stump speech and you can see from everything we're talking about, these are all ideas that we and you all have been fighting for decades. We got to win to get them implemented, and that's what we're about. You know, I'm proud, as I mentioned, to be endorsed by Sherrod Brown. I think he's a great progressive senator, and I liken the work that I do to his work and his beliefs and value systems. We align from everything from trade, frankly, to these issues.
Okay, how will you combat the voting restrictions Republicans are trying to impose on us?
Right, look, I think we have to do everyone in Ohio deserves to be able to vote quickly and fairly and not be treated differently based on where you live. And so this is an issue of equity for sure. There are two things. I think number one, we have to fight redistricting. Everything comes back to the redistricting fight to make sure the Supreme Court continues to uphold democracy. And if we are out of super minority status as a House and Senate, we'll have an opportunity to veto as governor bad bills. But if that doesn't happen, we can use the bully pulpit of the governor's office with the people to not only veto, but to fight against any voting limits on voting rights. This is a basic democracy issue that we have to make sure we are vigilant on. And again, in the Secretary of State's office, you have somebody that says the right thing when it's politically convenient, but then when the rubber meets the road, he completely walks to his extremists within the same day, I might add, in this gerrymandering stuff, right? Like in the day he said, oh, this congressional map needs changes, but by the evening he voted for the exact same map. So we've got a lot of work to do here to hold these people accountable. And having a governor in the state house that can lead that with the people, in partnership with people, we can get this done.
So our next question is, how will your campaign help rebuild the Ohio Democratic Party at the grassroots level?
I'm really proud that I am the only candidate that has agreed to go to every single county and this Ohio Deserves Better tour. And I've been to 72 of the 88 so far. I think we're heading to like 4 more this weekend. And look, I'm going to places that haven't seen a Democrat in years. And I think it's really important to show support in rural, urban, and suburban areas and not just, pay attention to only, 5 or 6 counties. Now, look, the 5 or 6 counties that drive the Democratic vote are really, really important. And we need to invest in them and support in them, but also give local efforts to help build that up. But I do see that we have an opportunity in rural and urban and suburban areas to lose less, as I like to say, to give support to Democrats out there, because when there is nobody there, they think they're alone. And then that depresses even the Democratic support you have in those communities. That's why we did this Ohio Deserves Better tour, really wanting to listen to everybody across the state. Frankly, it's been my favorite part of the campaign so far, to really see people and talk about the issues that are in their local communities. And we need to support that as a party. I think the party has, with their new leader of Liz Walters, has been working very hard to build this during a time where we can't get around as much. And I think taking the governor's seat will give the party even more support to really build that grassroots effort.
Okay, what are your plans to help strengthen and develop small businesses, 150 employees or more, or less in Ohio?
Well, this is Cheryl's favorite point too, right? So in our jobs plan, we have a specific area around small business. And frankly, Steve, I look at small businesses as 50 employees or less. So I want to be clear, because 150 employees, if you're in a small community, is a big employer, frankly. So I think of these as 50 or less, actually. And look, the state, what they've been doing, and I'm okay with the state investing in these really big, shiny development opportunities, but they need to invest in small business too. And they need to put more dollars in that. Number one, that helps with the inequity that we see, where only one metro region seems to get this funding. And number two, it helps everybody grow if we invest in small business. We have to grow our own in this state. It's a necessity. And that is, I think, really key for the state to be a partner in small business development. They haven't really been doing that because they've been just looking for the really big wins. But if we're really going to talk about sustainable economic development in communities from Marietta to Cleveland, from Zanesville to Eaton, we got to do the small business development and be really intentional about that. The other thing I'll say is small business development typically helps women-owned businesses and minority-owned businesses as well, because that's where a lot of these folks start and grow, and they need real support. So that's a key part of our plan as well. Right, Cheryl?
She's muted.
Oh, okay.
So the next question is, what is your position on EdChoice?
So I am very concerned with this latest example of the backpack bill, right? I said the one good thing they did was the funding for the school funding. And then the next thing they did was take 2 steps back, particularly on the backpack bill. This is a privatization effort to privatize our schools. And look, again, when John Husted became Speaker of the House, he decided to make an experiment of Dayton school children. And we were the first city in the state to have charters forced upon us with no regulations. Before Hurricane Katrina, Dayton had the most students in charter schools per capita than any other city in the country. And it has been devastating to our public schools. It is something you cannot build back. Not only does that investment get lost into the students, because again, there's very little regulation around charters in our state. Again, this was one of the things that they did to, take care of their special donors. But secondly, I can't underscore about how important local school districts are to communities. Now, I know I like to think that everybody decides where they're going to live based on who their mayor is. I know that is not true. It's just a figment of my mind, but really people make decisions on what kind of school district they're moving into and what that community looks like. And if we have the privatization of schools, that will devastate our communities. Not only will children be worse off, but it will affect the identity of our communities and the identity of cities across the state of Ohio. It is incredibly dangerous. And again, it is only being done because special interests and folks that line pockets to the legislatures and the governor are the ones that are bringing it up.
Okay, our last question, and we're perfect on time, I think.
You guys are a speed round. It's fast, fast, fast.
Well, that's why we get the questions ahead of time, so we don't have to find them in the chat.
All right.
Speaking of speed, thoughts on high-speed rail from Cleveland to Columbus?
Well, not only I'm for Cleveland to Columbus, Columbus to Dayton, Dayton to Cincinnati, right? The 3CD, I like to call it.
Right.
I'm in favor of this. I was proud I'm sorry, my dog is now doing something else. 1 second, Louis. He is now eating a wire. Okay. Sorry about that. I am really proud I was president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. And as president, we helped pass the bipartisan infrastructure bill and was one of the mayors that worked with the CEO of Amtrak to really push to make sure that we could have access to high-speed rail across the country. Now, look, who the governor is really important in this because these dollars are going to be competitive from the federal government. And we need to have leaders that are really fighting for this funding that recognize how we need to have diversifying transportation opportunities. And also Amtrak wants us to get through Ohio because it's hard to get through the rest of the country if you don't get through Ohio. So it not only connects our cities, but it also will connect us to the country. But we have to have someone that's an advocate in the State House to get this done. You saw in 2010 and 2011 when Kasich turned that money away, they won't even apply for this right now if the leadership stays the same. So I also want to say, Ohio is 47th in the country per capita of spending on public transportation inside communities, and the state needs to play a bigger role in this. Number one, if you're 47th in the country, that means Idaho, North Dakota, South Dakota, or Wyoming is beating you. And considering that we are one of the few states that have 6 cities with over 100,000 population, we need to make sure that public transportation is engaged, is really help funded through the state as well. And then also that will help us make that transportation system, public transportation, more regional and metro based. Because it shouldn't stop at county lines. We recognize that people don't decide where they go to work based on what county it is in, and too often that's the case across the state. State investing in public transportation could help regionalize and make a better product for the folks that are using public transportation. So yes, I'm proud of that, and you can check. I was one of the mayors in pushing for the high-speed rail piece in the infrastructure bill, and really proud of the work to get the opportunity to lead 500 mayors in the signing of the infrastructure bill that happened last November. Mayors have joked for about 6 years now that we've been in infrastructure week for a decade, and we're very happy to be out of it.
So thank you. Now is your opportunity to give your closing statement.
Well, look, I appreciate your all's conciseness, your seriousness about these issues. I know you have a choice in this governor's race. I think on every single issue, I think my values and Cheryl's values align more with the Cuyahoga County Progressives. And I ask for your support in this race. We think we have a real opportunity to win the state house and win the governor's race if we do something different, if we run a different kind of campaign and different kind of candidates. You know, Cheryl and I are working class people. We're proud of that. We live in working class neighborhoods. We're proud of that. I am the only candidate for governor that's not a millionaire in this race. Think about that. And it's getting really out of reach for folks to be able to run for statewide office. You know, all of the people that are running for governor have put their own personal money into this race. And so our effort has been a grassroots effort that I am proud of, you know, having 10 times the number of donors, with the average donation being around $100 compared to my opponents in both the Democrat and Republican primary, anywhere from $1,000 to $4,000 is the average donation. So I ask for your support. I ask for you to share the word about us, but really appreciate the work you do to continue to think about people and workers first. That's something that's really important to me, and how I was able to get to go to college is because of those good paying jobs that were union that my dad had. And, you know, that shouldn't be out of reach for others today either.
If we were in a live hall, we could give Mayor Whaley a huge round of applause, but either do this or do the clap hands and the reactions right now, please, folks. Thank you, Mayor Whaley.
Thank you, guys.
Speaking of live events, and maybe this is some karma, I don't know. But our last live candidates forum was almost exactly 2 years ago at the Cleveland Heights Library. It was County Council District 10 with Cheryl Stevens. Now, think of this. COVID cases are going way down, and Cheryl's with us tonight. Fingers crossed, maybe this is our last Zoom candidates forum before we can get back together again. Don't know, but Cheryl, I think since you're here, maybe it's like some sort of karma. Again, as we mentioned in the beginning, you'll get an email tomorrow with all the links to the events that we talked about earlier. As far as our endorsement vote for the governor's race, an email will be going out in a few days. It takes a while this is recorded on YouTube. It takes a while to download it. And it'll be a vote to endorse in the governor's race and the US Senate race. And what we'll have for you is the questionnaire that Mayor Whaley and Mayor Cranley filled out, as well as the video of this event and the video of the event we did with Mayor Cranley. And our endorsements are done by a vote of our membership. So, you know, please look for that email and cast your ballot, and for the US Senate race as well. And thank you very much, Mayor Whaley, for your time tonight. And thank you all for being here. And fingers crossed that since Cheryl's here, we'll be live next time. Take care.